Hello, my name is Daniel. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about a book I recently read that I wouldn't have known about, embarrassingly enough, if it weren't for BookTube. That is The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is a post-apocalyptic science fiction novel where the entire population of the world has been struck blind by an apparent meteor shower or the tail of a comet or something like that. To complicate matters, there's also these giant plant creatures called Triffids that are wandering around the entire world. These were bioengineered and created by apparently the Soviets, who wanted to make a more refined oil, and the monstrosity that they created suddenly had some other attributes beyond their oil. They can walk, and they're highly aggressive, so they will shoot like this proboscis out of their flowers, I guess, or out of like the main conical area and sting you. And if you get stung as a person, you die. So, slightly before the story begins, our main protagonist, who is a scientist working with the Triffids, is struck blind temporarily when the poison of one of these creatures is whipped into his face mask and a little bit gets on his eyes. He's struck blind and misses the meteor shower that causes the majority of the population, including animals and people, to go blind from witnessing it. He was one of the lucky few, and as the story progresses, we see that there is a small number of sighted people amongst all the blind folks. As the novel progresses, he joins several survival groups, each having a different idea of what the ideal reconstruction of the human race should involve. A lot of them are waiting for American intervention, kind of a mistake. Unfortunately, no one arrives to help, and every survival group is forced to come up with their own way of coping with the situation. As the book progresses, the Triffids escape, and suddenly they are breeding everywhere, which complicates things when you can't see. There are a lot of common themes in this book, the most important being sort of a challenge to traditional morality. When you're in a world where there is no one who can see and you're one of the sighted, are you obligated to help everyone that you can? This seems like a no-brainer at first, however, no help is coming, and therefore keeping everyone alive is not sustainable. Another theme is just the consequences of human action. These Triffids were created through bioengineering in sort of a greedy, capitalistic sense. People doing anything that they can to get an edge in the industry, and they create these monstrosities that end up killing a large portion of the population, as well as the possible revelation that the blindness was not caused by a meteor shower, but something else. Finally, this book is about adaptation. The Triffids adapt very quickly to circumstances, to the point where the characters start realizing, are these things sapient? However, it's also about adaptation for the survivors. Every time they come up with a plan, it is almost immediately scuttled through one event or another. You got plague, you got the Triffids unexpectedly learning how to break through fences. So adaptation is sort of seen on both sides of nature and human. While I do consider this to be an amazing novel, I do have some nitpicks about it. The first being sort of how sensationalized people's reactions are to going blind. Um, Early on in the book, you do have a lot of mass suicide that I think feels just a little bit premature. Back when I was in college, I had an accident of my own where during a theater production, I had actually blinded myself with a pyrotechnic that misfired when I was cleaning it, and it melted my hair and scarred up my eyes to the point where I just couldn't see. I wasn't 100% blind, but I did have like sort of a stained glass appearance of everything. I could see vague shapes and gradients of light, and that was about it. And while I did recover, I also thought at the time that this was just a permanent change. It was kind of scary, but at no point did I ever think, hey, well, you know what? out the window. And that is something in this book. I don't think that the despair was built up quite enough yet, where people started jumping out windows. It really happened like within the first few hours of people going blind. They're like, well, it's all over now. However, something the author did really right was the blind experience. There was this really funny tongue-in-cheek moment where the main character was initially blind, and he was recounting how everyone was talking about this light show spectacle, and the nurse who was working with him was like, "Oh, this is amazing! This is the most amazing event I've ever seen. It's a shame you can't see it. It's almost over." That was hilarious because I've had a lot of those moments in that month where I was blind, where people are like, "Wow, you don't know what you're missing." It's like, could you tone it down just a little bit? I thought that was really amusing, and I just had to point that out. He nailed that experience. Another weird thing is, it's not really a nitpick, but it was kind of amusing to me, is that when they were discussing how society was going to be restructured, there was a point where you could sort of tell this was written by a man. Um, the female love interest, Josella, had a point where she just went to the protagonist and said, you know, if if you really cared about me, you would take two other wives, one-sided, one-sided and two blind women, so we can rebuild the population. It's like, why would me caring about you have anything to do with like rebuilding and polygamy? It was a strange moment, but you know what? Gotta live it up sometimes, I guess. My final nitpick was I think the plague was just a little bit premature. Um, a few days into like this event where people are blind, I realize like the conditions can get like unsanitary, but you know, you're not gonna have this strange illness that's suddenly killing everyone. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I wish that the timeline was stretched out just a little bit more. Like, you could still keep it in the same page count, but you know, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But those are all nitpicks, as I said before. I just wanted more of the story. Unfortunately, there were no official sequels. Now we have two written by two different authors, but they are not by John Wyndham, and I heard they're not really all that great. So, do I continue or do I just leave well enough alone and just enjoy the book I have? This book inspired a whole lot of fiction that I just adore, particularly zombie fiction. These beats that we see in this book were the prelude to all of the Walking Dead and other survival stories. Particularly, I think the director of 28 Days Later specifically said, yes, Dave the Triffids was a huge inspiration. Anyway, this was excellent, and I can see now that there's a very good legacy for some of the stories that we enjoyed today. So what do you think? Do you enjoy this book? Leave a comment down below and give me some more recommendations. I appreciate it. Thank you.